The shadow in the attic. Ever since I moved into my new house, strange things started happening. The house was an old colonial, purchased at a great price due to its age and reputation. The locals claimed it was haunted, but I brushed it off as superstition. One day I decided to clean the attic. As I climbed the creaky wooden stairs, a chill ran down my spine. It was cold, unnaturally so for a summer day. The attic was dimly lit, filled with dust and antique furniture from the previous owners. In the corner was an old, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. As I pulled the cloth off, I noticed my reflection wasn't alone. Behind me stood a shadowy figure. It wasn't a normal shadow, but a pitch-black, solid figure, taller and larger than any human. My heart raced as I turned around, but there was nothing there. I looked back at the mirror. The figure was gone. That night, I was awakened by heavy footsteps in the attic. The thumping sound echoed through the silent house, each thud causing the old house to shudder. I felt a creeping sense of dread, but I forced myself to check the attic. The stairs creaked ominously under my weight as I climbed, each step increasing my fear. The attic was dark, the only light coming from the moon outside. As I swept my flashlight around, the light caught the mirror. The shadow figure was back, now standing right behind me. I turned, expecting to find nothing. But this time the shadow figure was there, a dark silhouette towering over me. Its form was undulating, like a thick cloud of smoke, but its eyes were the most terrifying. 2 points of pure white light that burned in the darkness. Panic surged through me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure remained motionless, its bright eyes fixated on me. It didn't move, it didn't speak, it just watched. The attic grew colder, my breath visible in the flashlight beam. I could feel a pressure, a silent demand emanating from the entity. It wanted me to leave. Summoning every bit of courage, I took a shaky step toward the stairs, my eyes never leaving the entity. As I moved, so did it. Not forward, but upwards, growing taller, more menacing. The ceiling seemed to distort around it, bending and bowing under an unseen force. I stumbled down the stairs, slamming the attic door behind me. The house was silent, except for my ragged breaths and pounding heart. I barricaded the door and spent the rest of the night huddled in my living room, every creak and groan of the house setting me on edge. The following day, I contacted a local priest and explained my situation. His face grew pale as I described the figure. He agreed to bless the house, focusing on the attic. When he opened the door, a gust of cold air rushed out. The priest stiffened, his breath hitching. He told me later that he'd felt a powerful presence, something ancient and malevolent. After a tense hour, the priest completed his rituals. He advised me to leave the house for a few days to let the atmosphere settle. I didn't need any convincing. I returned after a week. The house felt different, lighter. The temperature was normal, and the attic was just an attic. The mirror showed only my own nervous reflection. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. But even now, years later, I can't shake off the memory. The figure's piercing white eyes still haunt my dreams. The terror I felt is etched into my bones. It's a chilling reminder that there are entities in this world that defy understanding. Beings that lurk in the shadows, observing, waiting. The ghost of room 303. I used to work the night shift as a security guard at a century-old hotel in New England. The place had a spooky charm, with its antique decor and long winding hallways. Among the staff, there were hushed whispers about the hotel being haunted, particularly room 303. Room 303 had a grim history. In the late 40s, a woman named Agnes had reportedly killed herself in that room after her lover didn't show up. Since then, guests reported strange happenings, taps turning on by themselves, whispering voices, and an overwhelming feeling of sadness. One night, the front desk received a complaint about a woman crying in room 303. The strange thing was, room 303 was unoccupied. I was tasked with checking it out. Approaching the room, I could hear soft sobs echoing down the hall. I used my master key to unlock the door, expecting to find an intruder, but the room was empty. The crying, however, didn't stop. It was louder inside, resonating throughout the room, filling me with a deep sense of despair. Suddenly, the room grew cold. The bathroom tap turned on by itself, and the mirror began to fog up. As I watched, Words started appearing on the mirror, as if someone was writing from the other side. The words read, "Where is he?" Then, a figure materialized in the room. It was a woman in a vintage dress, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked at me, her gaze filled with heartbreak. It was Agnes. I was frozen in place, a cold sweat trickling down my spine. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice echoing around the room. Her expression was desperate, searching, as though I could provide the answer she sought. I don't know," I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. She seemed to look through me, her gaze focusing on something, or someone, only she could see. With a sorrowful sigh, she walked towards the window and stood looking out at the silent street below. "He promised," she whispered, the words trailing off in a sorrowful sigh. Just as suddenly as she appeared, Agnes vanished. The crying stopped, the bathroom tap shut off on its own, and the chilling cold lifted. I was alone in the silent room, the echoes of a heartbroken ghost the only evidence of the encounter. The rest of my shift passed in a daze. The memory of Agnes, her sorrowful eyes, and her desperate plea continued to haunt me. I reported the incident to my manager, who was surprisingly unfazed. She simply nodded and said, "Agnes doesn't mean any harm. She's just looking for her lost love." Despite the manager's assurance, I requested to be transferred to day shifts. The encounter with Agnes had shaken me. The sorrow in her eyes, the desolation in her voice had instilled in me a fear I couldn't shake off. From then on, whenever I walked past room 303, I felt a chill run down my spine. I never saw Agnes again, but I could sense her. I could feel her sorrow permeating through the room. It was a palpable reminder of her tragic end. Working at the hotel taught me that not all ghost stories are tales of horror and malevolence. Some are stories of despair, of lost love, and endless waiting. Room 303 is a testament to such a tale, a heartbreaking echo of a love that transcends life and death. The entity of Blackwood Mansion. Blackwood Mansion, an abandoned Victorian manor house, had long been a topic of local legend. It stood ominously at the outskirts of town, overgrown and deteriorating, an eerie relic of the past. Rumor had it that the mansion was haunted by its former occupant, a wealthy recluse who died under mysterious circumstances. As an amateur paranormal investigator, I decided to explore the mansion one night. I packed my gear, voice recorder, EMF detector, camera, and a flashlight, and set off towards the mansion. Walking through the grand entrance, I was hit by a wave of cold air, the stale scent of decay, and an inexplicable sense of dread. The mansion was darker than I had expected, with moonlight casting long, distorted shadows through the cracked windows. In the grand hall, I set up my gear and started recording. Asking the standard questions, I awaited responses that may come through my equipment. After an hour, I hadn't picked up anything. Just as I was about to pack up and move to another room, I heard it. A sound coming from upstairs. A slow, deliberate thump, 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 as if someone was dragging something heavy. My heart pounded as I slowly ascended the creaky staircase. The noise led me to a closed door. Gathering my courage, I pushed it open. The room was empty, except for a large, ornate mirror covered in a layer of dust. In the dim light, I could see my own reflection, and something else. A figure standing beside me. It was a man, well-dressed, with a blank expression. As I turned around, there was no one there, but in the mirror, the figure still stood. I reached out to touch the mirror, half expecting my hand to pass through some spectral barrier, but it was solid, cold. The figure in the mirror copied my movement, its hand reaching out to touch mine. Except it wasn't mimicking my reflection. It was as if it was trying to reach out to me from the other side of the mirror. Frightened, I backed away, stumbling over my own feet and falling onto the dusty floor. The figure in the mirror remained, its hand still outstretched. It seemed to stare at me with a strange longing, its eyes pleading. Grabbing my voice recorder, I asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure opened its mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. I looked at my voice recorder, praying it picked up something. I left the room, shutting the door behind me. The rest of the mansion was silent. I felt a mixture of fear and confusion. I needed to review my recordings to try to make sense of this encounter. Returning home, I listened to the audio recording. Static filled the airwaves until I heard it. A whisper, faint but audible. "Help! Trapped!" it said. The message was chilling, the voice filled with a desperation that made my blood run cold. I haven't returned to the mansion since that night. The voice, the figure in the mirror. It felt too real, too urgent. The thought of the figure reaching out to me from the mirror haunts me. Was it the spirit of the former owner? And why did he say he was trapped? What could he possibly need help with?